Most gardeners think that their soil is the reason for why their plants fail. And they're probably right. Maybe they think it's too much clay. Maybe they think it's too much sand. Maybe they think there's not enough fertilizer. Maybe the water holding capacity sucks. And so therefore you go in and try to correct it or fix it. Now here's a really weird thing. One of the catalysts that makes soil what soil is incredibly fixable, while the other is nearly impossible. It is an inherited DNA type trait that you are going to receive regardless of what you do to change it. And today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the single ingredient you can add to your soil to actually change the one factor you can change and make a big difference in your garden. Now, if we have never met before, hi, hello, my name is Ashley. I have a bachelor's of science in soil science, and I like to take said science and apply to all things plants. The comment section and anyone who hits that subscribe button is what we like to call the geek crew. And there are crew people from all over the world, international actually, that give a lot of feedback on their specific regions and some of their very specific situations, which I highly, highly encourage you to check out because I may be regurgitating stuff to you, but firsthand experience is always the better experience, in my humble opinion. When gardeners typically look at soil, I often will get DMs on Instagram or comments in the comment section of YouTube saying things to the effect of, my soil is pure clay, or my soil is pure sand. Sometimes I just get a generic, my soil is terrible. I've got no idea what's going on. And what you're describing, whether it's because of a physical analysis or a visual analysis of what's going on in the ground, maybe there's lots of cracking, maybe there's compaction, maybe there's aggregation. Oftentimes what you are describing to me is actually what we like to call soil texture. Now, soil can be broken down into only 3 particle sizes as soil scientists. It is sand, silt, or clay. There is no in between. We then use something called the soil textural triangle to determine where on the percentage of those 3 you land. And that actually gives you a really good idea of exactly where your soil is or what kind of soil you have and how to manage it correctly. And if you're ever confused or you're wondering, I don't know what I have, please DM me on Instagram. I have no problemo actually looking at any sort of photos and walking you through what photos I need or videos I need to be able to tell you what your soil texture is free of charge. Shocker here. I actually work in the world of soil fertilizer and I farm and I help out farmers all the time. And so this is just a little side hustle, this whole YouTube thing. I do it for funsies. Oddly enough, that's my personality trait. And so I have no problem doing that for you for free. Now, here's the fun part about the soil textural triangle, sand, silt, and clay, and ultimately the prescription I give you in regards to what your soil texture is. And that is the fact that these are all geological processes that took place to make that soil particulate. So if you have a naturally heavily clay soil, which, by the way, in my experience and my 15 years of working with soil, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably is not the case. I very rarely see a purely clay soil. Usually it's a clay loam on the extreme end, but anyways, I digress. Say you tell me you have a pure clay soil. It would take a truckload of sand, and no, it does not make cement. Otherwise, our ancestors would have sidewalks thousands of years ago, because I'm pretty sure they would have figured that out by now. Anyways, it would take a truckload of sand to be able to change the parameters that make up your soil and actually change it or shift it from a clay loam to something that is not so clay-ish. So essentially what I'm saying is that it doesn't really matter what amendments you add. Peat, compost, manure, you can't change your soil texture. That is the DNA of your soil. It is what made your soil what it is today. And it can be caused by glaciers rubbing against bedrock. It can be caused by lakes, glacial lakes, massive glacial lakes for that matter, inland seas, if you will, It can be caused by rapid moving rivers. Some of you maybe live on what we now call stabilized sand dunes in the soil science world, hence why you have a lot of sand. Others actually may live on an old beach of a glacial soil area. Oddly enough, Saskatoon, if you're in like Brighton, Willow Grove area, if you look out to the horizon on Highway 5, kind of walk a highway, you will see these hills, and those hills are actually the old beach of what was the giant glacial Equestrian, and aka inland sea, that covered most of North America. So that's actually the edge of it. Oftentimes there's a lot of sand, and the opposite end of that is actually out by like Delisle and that sort of thing. So those guys, you got stabilized sand dunes. You have an old desert, if you will. So if we know we can't fix texture, what soil trait actually can we change and what matters to us as gardeners? Well, that would be what we call soil structure. So soil structure is essentially how the soil arranges itself into aggregates. I want you to think of a home. You have walls or beams within your house that cannot be removed. And if they are removed, the structure collapses. Well, soil structure works on a very similar physicality or physics. Soil structure actually, from a physics perspective, acts very similar. Essentially, right now I'm sitting in what we would consider the equivalent of a soil macropore, if you will. So how I want you to think about this is that the texture is the cake batter and the structure is how the cake decides to rise and ultimately how it holds air. So soil with good structure has crumb-like aggregates that allow for oxygen, water storage, root pathways, and microbial habitats. These aggregates that we see when we shovel or we dig, they're kind of like little block-like things. We call these soil beds. And research consistently, time after time, meta-analysis, single papers, all of this show in the world of soil science that soil beds, soil aggregates are hugely important to soil structure and ultimately what we like to call a healthy soil. Root penetration, nutrient cycling abilities, water infiltration, yield stability are all reliant on this. So the question becomes, what builds soil structure? If we know that the cake batter is our texture, what exactly makes up the egg or the water or the milk that is added to those ingredients? And quite simply, it is one singular item, and that is organic material. Now, this is most commonly compost, but it could be manure, it could be peat, it could be leaf mold, which is a very homemade version of compost that is free of charge. It could be something simple as grass clippings, vermicast, you name it, just organic material in general. Now, the ratios you apply do matter. So let's kind of dig into some of the depth of exactly what makes this the case. Essentially, organic material is what we call the glue of the soil. And so it actually glues soil together, which in turn makes these clumps or these aggregates that we're looking for. It even more importantly actually feeds microorganisms, which in turn causes nutrient cycling, which in turn causes bioavailable nutrients for the plants themselves. As this whole decomposition process takes place, we end up with compounds like polysaccharide, fungal hyphae network, and glomin, for example. And all of these are essentially types of glue. Now, what's the connection between this glue, soil texture, structure, in regards to productivity of the plants? Because that's ultimately what we care about as gardeners. One factor for sure is the airspace or the porosity of the soil. These spaces in between soil particulates yield air, and these air spaces ultimately yield areas that roots can penetrate in a safe, healthy manner. And this is because roots respire. They actually consume oxygen, not just water and nutrients. So I've done several series now. I'm kind of in the middle of a repeat series of the 17 essential nutrients, but there are 3 additional nutrients I've added to that list outside of the 17. These include oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon, actually. So all said, there's 17 plus 3. And the three, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, oftentimes aren't spoken about because they are beyond primary, they're beyond macro, they are like exactly what is needed and needed in such an abundance that we don't often think about them because they're naturally occurring in the soil. But with the soil structure not being where we need it to be, are not always present in the soil structure or to the plant. And one, namely, I will say, like clockwork, is oxygen. So there are kind of three factors that oxygen affects. Number one is oxygen availability. And again, this is for the respiration of the roots themselves. Please roots respire as well. We also have water distribution. We need kind of the ability for water to drain, but also to be held in suspension. And so we need H2O, oxygen with two hydrogens, to kind of move or displace itself accordingly to allow for just straight oxygen along with that H2O kind of within balance. Then we also have microbe cycling. So our nutrient cycling done by microbes. We have roots that respire, but we also have microbes that are consuming that oxygen to use for that nutrient cycling process. What studies have shown us repeatedly over and over and over again, and I can actually cite a specific study from 2019, which is a meta-analysis. If you don't know what a meta-analysis is or how it applies, it's basically someone who looks at a huge plethora of published scientific journals that have been peer-reviewed and then puts them into a single journal for us to read that actually tells us kind of what all these journals are saying in a cohesive manner and ultimately giving us an end result based on 50 to 100 or however many actual journals. But there was a global meta-analysis done specifically in 2019 from Oilfield et al. And what they showed was that the oxygen content was directly related to organic material. And therefore, if there was higher levels of organic material, there was repeatedly better yields being produced, whether it was flowers or fruits. But again, there's a balance there. We don't want straight organic material and we don't want straight mineral soil, if you will. So if we know soil structure is hugely important and we know that soil texture can actually be changed or altered, and we know that soil organic material alters our structure for the better, better compared to the addition of like a mass amount of sand or clay to kind of counteract if we're clay or sand heavy. If we know this, and we know it increases nutrient cycling, the glues, the aggregations, the obvious answer here is to add organic material, but we don't want to do this in excess. I've been saying this repeatedly. I say this in all my videos. And so what is the prescribed amount of compost or organic material, vermicast, manures, compost, leaf molds, peats? How much do you want to add? The answer to that is somewhere between 1 to 2 inches per year. Even more importantly, we don't just want to top with this, meaning we don't want to just top dress and leave it. We actually want to integrate it within that first few inches of our soil surface. This small amount is incredibly powerful. And in a nature's world, for example, a forest or a grassland, we end up with deposits of organic material that then are incorporated into that first few inches of soil via activity, usually roly-polies, worms, voles, mice, any sort of critters. They will actually integrate it in that. In a garden, we have less of this activity, just naturally speaking. In Canada, you probably have, well, you should have very little earthworm activity because those are actually invasive species because the glaciers were so heavy and earthworms were not native to Canada, most of Canada anyways, and huge portions of the United States of America. And they were introduced by Europeans as white folk actually brought them over. I digress. We just want to act as those critters, if you will, because we don't have critters in the sheer volume that we see in Mother Nature. And Mother Nature doesn't always have a perfect system. It's a balanced system for sure, but it's not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination. So that's where we want to interfere and actually incorporate that. 1 to 2 inches doesn't seem like much, but the way that you should look at it is that if you were to take the tomato plant that was in position last year, say it occupied a 1 foot kind of square block. If you were to take that entire tomato plant, move out the carbon portion of it, and just dry it up, ground it down, and then let a worm or whatever the case actually manipulate it, how much physical compost would you end up with? Probably not much. And you probably would only end up with 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So us putting 2 inches is us being quite aggressive in regards to the distribution or the addition of organic material. But we want to try to mimic Mother Nature as much as possible. And that 1 to 2 inches allows us to do that without overdoing it. Now, organic material, when added, and the reason why we don't want to add too much is because organic material actually adds a buffer to the soil. And this buffer is something that actually changes what we call the cation exchange capacity, CEC. And this is the battery of our soil. So what I want you to think about is a small battery versus a deep cell classic Canadian cold winter battery. We have batteries that will hold less charge and will start in California, no problem. If we were to take said battery, move it up to Canada, and then plug it in and try to use it, it's probably not going to work as well. The capacity is not as large. When we add organic material to our already decided texture, we don't just improve the structure, we actually improve the chemistry and ultimately the ability for that entire soil system to hold onto a charge. And a charge means potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus, all your micronutrients, molybdenum, iron, you name it. It's all a part of that battery. And so if we increase the battery holding capacity, then that means more nutrients for that plant. And this is particularly important when we're talking about like a sandy soil versus a clay soil. A sandy soil, increasing this cation exchange capacity is huge. Clay soil, maybe not so much, but for sure a sandy soil, majorly important. So the takeaway here is that yes, you can change your soil structure. No, you cannot really change your soil texture without a ton of work included. So next time you go to add organic material or compost to your soil, you may want to think in the back of your mind how much you're adding and exactly why it's being added. It's also important to actually observe what you're adding and ensure that it is a finer texture that mimics something similar to soil. Because if we have a lot of chunks, a lot of sticks, that actually doesn't benefit us in any way, shape, or form, particularly if we're looking to change the structure. If we're looking just to add nutrients and whatever, it's fine. But if we want to change that structure, it's definitely something we need to consider. Is something that's a finer grade. If you want to learn more about soil science or plant science, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. This is actually what Google says you need to watch, and that is my latest and greatest video, hopefully. Anyways, I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.